Hello and welcome back to Backtracking, part 2 of the Linkin Park episode. Let's just get back into it with Linkin Park's fifth album, Living Things. Released in 2012, the labels and producers are still the same as last time, unlike with the band's previous album, which had one song released making me judge it too harshly before it was fake got me to listen to this one, however. The first single released from Living Things, titled Burn It Down, was pretty much exactly what I wanted from Linkin Park at that point. It takes the electronic route that A Thousand Suns had, but adds the hybrid theory style of mixing together few essentials, still having a lot of good experimentation. Actually, this is more of what I wanted A Thousand Suns to sound like, but I'm fine with the order of the album releases because we got teasers of the sound of Living Things throughout A Thousand Suns. Living Things surprised me more, actually. Despite the mixed reaction it got from critics, as most albums post-Meteor have gotten, I quite enjoyed this one more than I was expecting. I think that by 2012 I was used to hearing rock and metal music add in some more electronic influences, but during that time period it was still far from perfect. However, this album was one of the bright spots of the era, and it almost made my top 10 albums of 2012 list. I guess because most of it sounds like how I wanted Thousand Suns to sound, or in short, like New Divide, which is maybe my favourite Linkin Park song, despite actually not being on any album by the band. The fact that Living Things took more of that route and expanded upon what the song did for the band was a very smart choice indeed, and I can appreciate the care that the band put into it. It's structured very solidly and balanced well with the more electronic stuff and with the heavier elements. There's even more usage of gang vocals here and there, and several of the band members use more samples, with Brad Delson even providing additional singing on the song until it breaks. Lyrically, it's also a mixture of the old and the new, with some political stuff like A Thousand Suns had and Minutes to Midnight, but also stuff about depression and relationships like Hyper Theory and Meteora. Even with different types of messages, the album is still balanced well in storytelling, with the right mood catcher for the appropriate style and tone. Also, hello, my cat just joined me. Hi. Chester's screams sound so much better, and his clean singing adds more great range as well, conveying his emotion and lyrics beautifully. Mike's rapping sounds great too, and he sounds like he's having a bit more fun with this one, churning out some great work of his own. Brad doesn't have as many solos, but he pulls out good riffs and works around as many instruments as he can greatly. Phoenix's bass work pounds good and deep, just sounding great with nice electronic stuff. Hunt's DJ work stepped up with awesome timing and adding great bleeps and bloops and just good sense of things. And Rob's drumming is awesome too, balanced well with the sounds and putting a good performance with the variety of sounds that are on the album. Standout songs include Life's Great Misery, Burn It Down, Victimize, the great closing song in Powerless, and my favourite in I'll Be Gone. This album is the prime result of the band mixing the old and the new really well, with awesome production tricks to boot, and they all just sound like they're having fun with their performances. I can recommend this one. It's quite surprised me, and it just might surprise you if you do the same. We next reach the band's sixth album, The Hunting Party. Released in 2014, Warner Brothers and Machine Chopper saw the labels, but the production crew changes as Mike Shinoda is joined by Brett Delson. I guess they're giving his more prominent role in the last album. He still wanted more to do, and he does do a mighty fine job, but we'll talk more about that later. So yeah, this album is titled The Hunting Party because the band wanted to hunt down that same drive that gave their first two albums such fire and passion, with the band themselves being the party that does the hunting, so to speak. And they do a bang-up job. This is probably the band's heaviest output since Hybrid Theory, and it mixes the rock-solid Minutes to Midnight well with the sounds of Hybrid Theory. But this album is still very much its own beast, and what a beast it is. Before that, let's talk about guest stars, because we actually have some this time around. I'm not talking how A Thousand Suns sort of had some. Page Hamilton of Helmet lends his guitar skills to the song All for Nothing. Rapper Rakim appears on the song Guilty All the Same, which was the first single from the album. Darren Malakian of System of a Down appears on Rebellion, and finally Tom Morello of Rage Against the Machine fame appears on the more instrumental track titled Drawbar. One of my favourite things about this album, besides the short waiting time since Living Things, is the fact that most of this album was improvised at first. They just played something that sounded cool, and they made those cool things into cool songs. They actually sound like they're having fun. You'd think that with the heavy rock vocals that Johan would take a backseat, but actually, he's still pretty prominent when he needs to be. He draws up a good sample and sound here and there, but there's no overlap, and nobody's really trying to steal anybody else's screen time, for lack of a better phrase. There's a lot of balance, and the guest stars are used really well, with the guest guitarists providing good solos and such, and Rock interference being kind of underrated, I feel. A lot of people bash on it, but I quite like what he brings to the table, and all the guest stars in general just add to the overall structure of things, and it's a good base to hold. Lyrically, there is more political stuff, but it's not as misdirected as past attempts, with more focus on helping each other as opposed to just blasting at the opposing side and what have you, which most political albums tend to do. So, Chester's vocals just sound amazing with a more guttural, deeper sounding scream while still maintaining his own manic energy and such. Mike's rapping doesn't show up as much as last time, but he still provides a good backdrop and even a decent riff here and there because he does play rhythm guitar. I forgot to mention that before. Brad steals the show in this one, arguably, though, with furious riffs and brilliant solos, not to mention just a fantastic work rate. Rob's drumming too has picked up on speed and balance, also sounding amazing and driving things home and just hitting heavier. Phoenix's bass is good and heavy too, laying out some good groundwork of its own, and Joe's own work is still solid despite how sparsely he appears on the album, with good samples and beats here and there that just sound really, really nice. Just sound nice. Standout songs include Guilty All the Same, Rebellion, Wastelands, Keys to the Kingdom, and my favourite in the song Mark the Grace. With a newfound focus on Fury, Linkin Park churned out a fantastic record that's as heavy as it is memorable, with great production and energetic, lively performances, and I can just recommend this one. It's good. It probably would have almost made my 2014 albums of the year list, because listening back to it, yeah, it's just that good. So I can recommend this one. And finally, we reached the band's most recent album, One More Light, released in 2017 through the same labels and produced by the same people. This is also the band's shortest album at 35 minutes and 19 seconds. It features some guest stars with rappers Pusha T and Stormzy appearing on the song Good Goodbye and singer Kiara featuring on the album's lead single titled Heavy. Sort of an ironic name for a first single, as we will soon find out. One More Light is a total departure from their old sound, and it feels kind of like a whiplash from how heavy the Hunting Party was, but we still get let down easy. I remember that I hated this album when I first listened to it, not because of the move from rock to pop, but I don't want to accuse the band of selling out because they didn't. I hated this album because it stuck to so many pop tropes at the time that became the very reason that I listened to the bands like Linkin Park in the first place. Sure, those tropes aren't used in excess, but the fact that there's so many just kind of bugs me. So yes, I did hate this album way back when, but I hated it for different reasons to other people. Listening to it again, it's kind of sobering. I never listened to it a second time until I did for the purposes of this episode, and I guess that part of that was me not liking the album at the time, or part of it was more what happened 2 months after this album came out. Maybe I just couldn't force myself to listen to it again after the first time because, well, these guys were my favourite band as a kid. Even going through all of that stuff leading up to One More Light wasn't easy, especially knowing what I know now and knowing what happened. Chester made no secret of his past or his demons, but still. Anyway, I should actually get back to the album before I get too sad. Structurally, despite containing those signature pop tropes that I really hate, there is an underlying current of fun and positiveness through the album's length. Thankfully, the album's short length is a mercy to some who would hate the change in sound, and they get as much done as they can with the 10 tracks present, which is shorter than any other Linkin Park album to date, as well. Lyrically, it's the band's most positive-sounding one, I'd wager, tackling dark issues like depression and loneliness, but in a heartfelt way that others would find corny, but I quite enjoyed it. Chester is the main performer, with his focus on a cleaner singing style apparent, but he does well for himself. Most rapping is only really present on Good Goodbye, but his singing has improved. Brad doesn't have any super heavy riffs, but he provides some good backdrops to things, so I can appreciate that. Phoenix's bass work sounds good, playing along well with the poppier feel to things. Rob's drumming takes a backseat too, adding a gentler tone to things when needed, and Hunt's DJ work is barely there to be fair, but it's good when it does pop up, adding some nice little elements to things from time to time, once again only appearing when it's needed. Standard songs include Talking to Myself, Good Goodbye, Invisible, and my favourite in the title track. One More Light is a weird one to pin, and whilst I do dislike it still, I don't hate it as much as I used to. I can recommend this one bizarrely, if mostly for sentimental reasons. It's weird. So, let's round them up. My most favourite was probably Meteora. It's just a good balance of things, and it builds upon Hybrid Theory so well whilst adding so many good little things too. Least favourite is maybe One More Light. I know I gave it more praise than Minutes to Midnight, and once again, I don't hate One More Light for the same reasons everyone else seems to, but for my own. I think I could appreciate it better if they tried to avoid the pop tropes of that time a bit better, especially since 2017 was drowning in that style when it came to pop. Like, just so many dance and EDM influences that we really didn't need. Yeah. Anyway, still, One More Light is worth your time, but listening to it won't be easy. I mean, it wasn't easy for me to listen to any of these albums, but there you go. Anyway, that'll about do it for me and for this episode. Next time we head back to Canada again, because I haven't been there enough this season, woohoo, for something a bit different as I cover a band called FM Static, the side band of 1000 Foot Crutch members Trevor McNevin and Steve Augustine. And, as always, thank you for listening. You're awesome. Bye-bye.